What's up, guys? It's time to learn some economics. This is the lecture for Module 25. Today, we are going to learn how to describe the role of banks in the economy. We're going to identify the reasons for and types of banking regulation, and then we're going to explain how banks create money. Now, the monetary role of banks. A bank is a financial intermediary that uses liquid assets in the form of bank deposits to finance illiquid investments of borrowers. Essentially, what that means is that the bank is going to take our cash deposits and they're going to loan them out to people. All right, and we have basically that is the main role of banks in our economy, is to give us a safe place to keep our money, and then to take our money and channel it into other forms of investments. Now, a T account is a tool for analyzing a business's financial positions by showing in a single table the business's assets on the left and liabilities on the right. So you're going to take this opportunity to draw yourself a T account, or use one of the T accounts that are available in your notes here. And we're going to take a look at it from the perspective of the Bank of Wiley. Alright, and so we've got our assets and our liabilities. And if you guys have taken an accounting class or anything like that, then this should look very familiar. So liabilities, doesn't really matter. Okay, so a bank, like I said, is a safe place for us to keep our money. So if we take our money to a bank and deposit it there, they owe us that money. Alright, and so in this example here, alright, let's say that at the Bank of Wiley, there's people that have $100,000, all right, deposited in their accounts. All right, we would put that over here for the bank's T account. Think of a T account as basically a way to organize money. All right, and also another fun fact about T accounts: your assets will always equal your liabilities. Always. All right, so if something's off there, then you've messed up and you need to go back and fix it. All right, now a bank in the United States must keep 10% of deposits as reserves, as cash. The other 90% they're able to loan out to people. So let's say we all get our money and we all go to the Bank of Wiley and make our deposits, and that totals up to $100,000. Well, that means that the Bank of Wiley must keep $10,000 in required reserves. Alright, now, notice over here how I said assets must equal liabilities. Well, that means we have an extra $90,000 somewhere. Alright, and basically, again, we're just organizing this here. We're going to put that $90,000 and we're going to label that as excess reserves. Alright, so that's how much money that the Bank of Wiley has left over to make loans to people. All right, and then let's say that I decide, I'm sitting there one day and I decide I want to go buy myself a house in Wiley, and I need $90,000 to do that. So I go to the Bank of Wiley and I go to them and I say, sit down with the branch manager and I explain why I need the $90,000 and why they should loan it to me, and they decide that sounds like a good investment. All right, well, they make that loan to me, so now they've loaned out that $90,000 to me. But we're not finished yet, okay, because remember when I said assets must equal liabilities? Well, we have too much going on over here. All right, so we just basically would need to make sure that we subtract that $90,000 from here, and that balances that up to zero. So the Bank of Wiley now has nothing in excess reserves, $10,000 in required reserves, $90,000 in loans, and $100,000 in deposits. So you see how that works? This is, again, just a way to organize the money that's inside the Bank of Wiley. Okay? All right. Bank reserves are the currency that banks hold in their vaults, plus their deposits at the Federal Reserve. The reserve ratio is the fraction of bank deposits that a bank holds as reserves. In the example above, we set that at 10%, which is also what the Federal Reserve sets the required reserve ratio at for all banks in the United States today, which is the smallest fraction of deposits that the Federal Reserve allows banks to hold. Now, banks can hold more deposits if they choose, right? They don't have to just keep 10% in deposit. But most banks are going to want to loan out as much money as possible because that's how they make money. Now, a bank run can be a big issue, all right? A bank run is a phenomenon in which many of a bank's depositors try to withdraw their funds due to fears of a bank failure. So let's go back up here to our example, all right? So let's say that Bank of Wiley has made me this loan, all right? And basically what's happening is that they've made me the loan of $90,000, which means they only have $10,000 in required reserves. Let's say everybody tries to go get their deposits out at once, right? The bank owes us $100,000 technically. They're not going to have the cash on hand to do that. So that becomes a huge problem for banks. All right. A bank run, historically these have often proved contagious with a run on one bank leading to a loss, leading to other banks to fail. Okay, because people just start losing faith in those banks. There was a wave of bank runs in the early 1930s to bring the panic to an end. FDR declared a national bank holiday, closing all banks for a week and giving bank regulators time to close and help the banks. Since then, regulation has protected the United States from most bank runs. There still are a couple that happen every now and then, but for the most part, we're good because of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which guarantees the first $250,000 of any bank account is insured. As a result, there could still be a rush on banks, but they don't happen very much anymore. We don't have to write that down, but just so you know, regulators require that owners of banks hold substantially more assets than the value of bank deposits. Just in case something bad happens, they can then sell those assets. That's in the real world, so we're not going to worry about those too much. Now, reserve requirements, those are rules again set by the Federal Reserve that determine the minimum reserve ratio for a bank. The discount window is an arrangement in which the Federal Reserve stands ready to lend money to banks in trouble. Basically, let's say that the Bank of Wiley did have a run on it and they only had $10,000. They could borrow the other $90,000 from the Federal Reserve to cover their deposits for temporarily, and then they would pay them back over time plus interest. So that's kind of what the Federal Reserve does to help keep banks afloat. Basically, the way that banks create money is through loans. So that's all you really have to write down. So if we look here at this first example, all right, first stage, Silas takes his cash and doesn't do anything with it. He just keeps it under his bed. Well, there's $1,000 in circulation. Okay, nothing in checkable bank deposits, so the money supply is only $1,000. Now, in the second stage, Silas deposits his cash in First Street Bank, which lends out $900 to Mary, who then pays it to Ann Acme. So what happened is that $900 extra dollars, all right, gets put back into circulation, plus the $1,000 that Silas deposited. So the bank has effectively created a $900 in new money by loaning it out to Mary. All right, so the total money supply has grown to $1,900. In the third stage, Ann Acme deposits that $900 into their bank account, which lends out another $810 to a borrower. So you can see that there's $1,900 now in checkable bank deposits, $810 currency, and the money supply is up to $2,710. All right. Now, excess reserves are bank reserves over and above its required reserves. Now, there's a shortcut to figuring out how much money the bank can create from a single deposit, and that is something that is called the money multiplier. Okay. Essentially, the money multiplier is the ratio of the money supply to the monetary base. So let me write this down here. So the money multiplier, or MM, is equal to 1 over the reserve requirement. All right. And from this point forward, you'll see me write this as 1 over RR. So if the reserve requirement equals 10%, we would say that the money multiplier equals 1 over 0.1, which equals 10. Alright, so we'll do some practice with the money multiplier in class, but that's just a formula to figure it out. You then take it and you multiply it, right, times the new money that is created, and then you get your maximum money expansion. So, well, we'll do more practice with that in class, so don't worry about it too much for now. Alright, so what we learned was banks allow depositors immediate access to their funds, but they also lended out most of those funds in their care. To meet demands for cash, they maintain bank reserves. Alright, the reserve ratio is the ratio of bank reserves to bank deposits. A T account summarizes a bank's financial position. Banks have been subject to bank runs sometimes, most notably in the 1930s. However, we came up with deposit insurance, and when currency is deposited in a bank, it starts a multiplier process in which a bank lends out excess reserves, leading to an increase in the money supply, so banks create money. Money multiplier is the ratio of the money supply to the monetary base, and again, just as a review, the money multiplier is equal to 1 over the reserve requirement. Alright, so hope you learned something today. Write down any questions you have, and I can answer them in the next class.